Delighted to welcome you here to the Irish Post Drinks in the City in association with DRS Bond Management. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sarah Murphy and I'm the Director of Commercial Operations for the Irish Post. And we're delighted to have you all here with us to celebrate this evening Irish business success in London. 2017 has been another very exciting year for us. The print edition that's out weekly consistently provides a weekly digest of Irish news, sport, entertainment from all around Britain. Our website continues to boom as a global Irish media outlet with monthly users in excess of 750,000 from all around the globe. We've over 500,000 social media followers, weekly social reach in the tens of millions, and we have in recent months launched our first weekly live broadcast music show called The Vault Sessions, which as we speak tonight has the Coronas performing on it live on Facebook. We published our annual construction magazine Building Britain in June, and we have our next two business publications, In Business and Companies 100, coming out in the next 2 months. This year was further enhanced by our acquisition of Irish TV, which we are currently planning our activation strategy for. It's part of a longer term vision for the Irish Post Group, and with this in mind, we are pleased to have begun a partnership with TG4 earlier this year when they broadcast the Irish Post Country Music Awards live across Ireland in their primetime slot with record audience viewing figures. Very happy about. So our next event, which I'm sure most of you have been to, is the annual Irish Post Awards, which will take place in 6 weeks' time in the Great Room in the Grosvenor House on Park Lane. The awards are an annual black tie event which sees 1,000 members of the business community from across Ireland and Britain come together to celebrate Irish business success. We're delighted to announce this year's event will be broadcast live on TG4 into Ireland also, and globally online to an audience in excess of 1 million people. We will be releasing the news tomorrow that Baroness Karen Brady will be receiving our Outstanding Contribution to Business in Britain Award, and we have many more very exciting names to announce in the coming weeks. We're down to our last handful of tables, so if anyone wants to attend, speak to myself or any of the team afterwards and we'll be able to arrange it for you. So I hope we'll see you there, and we thank you for the support across all the areas I've mentioned this evening. Now, a couple of brief thank yous. First of all, our sponsor this evening, which is DRS Bond Management, who we have partnered with over the next year for some very exciting projects that you'll hear a little bit about this evening. We have one of the directors, Chris Davies, with us, and I would like to express my sincerest thanks for your support, and we look forward to building on the relationship going forward. Also, a short thanks just to DWF and Tom Mungovan for hosting us here this evening. I'm sure you're all very impressed by the view behind us. And also a special thank you to our guest speaker, John Teeling, who has travelled especially from Dublin to speak with us this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Chris Davies to say a few words.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm the meat in the sandwich between the beauty and... Anyway, John. I agree with Sarah. Thanks to Tom Mungovan and DWF for the use of what is a fantastic venue. I never tire of that view, but I don't think any of us do. The Irish Post are amazing partners for DRS to work with. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to sponsor tonight's event. I'm not going to dwell for too long because surety bonds are, well, frankly dull. And John's going to talk about whiskey, which frankly I'd rather be drinking than talking about surety bonds. But in summary, we specialise in arranging surety bonds largely for the construction and supply chain sectors, including waste management. We have a sizable contingent of our team here this evening: Anna, Sophie, Daniel, Michael and Pranav. They're all shy, so they won't say hello. And we do have a number of British-Irish clients on both sides of the Irish Sea and both sides of the border. And we want more, in simple terms. In 2017, we've already seen a lot of people come and talk to us that previously didn't even know who we were, and that's all down to our friends at the Irish Post, and indeed other people in the British-Irish community, London Irish Construction Network, Bitter and what have you. So a big thanks to everybody involved for helping us to get the name out there and to build the brand. The depth of the Irish Post relationships in the community, I think, is borne out by the fact that I think we've had to bus extra seats in and presumably not run out of booze for this evening. In short, DRS is a one-meal restaurant. We only do bonds. We don't do trade credit insurance. We don't do commercial insurance. We only do surety bonds. So hopefully it's a good meal. If you're only doing chicken pie, better be a good chicken pie. We are, however, committed to working quite closely with people that add value in the truest sense. So people that enhance the balance sheet and enhance cash flow. And with that in mind, somewhere in the room, although I can't see him immediately, is Barnaby Redwood from Aiming, who we work with very closely around R&D tax credits. So again, if that's a scheme that potentially you think may be of interest to you, it can generate a lot of cash and a lot of CT savings, corporation tax savings, then please do talk to Barney. Finally, an unashamed plug. We've got our own parliamentary review event at the House of Commons on the 2nd of November. The Irish Post will be attending, they'll be doing the media, funnily enough. And it's a real opportunity to speak to other senior figures in the construction industry, as I'm sure you are tonight, discuss the current themes and trends in the sector. And so in addition to members of the financial and construction press, there will be a combination of main contractors, subcontractors, some employers, sureties, Gerald Knights from Aviva who's in the room, and various others. There he is at the back, again hiding. And a number of other corporate partners, including Aiming once again. So the lead speaker for that will be Paul Lester CBE, who's the chairman of the John Lang Infrastructure Fund. A number of you will have had invites from us already, and there's quite a few faces in here I recognise. And anybody that wants an invite to that, we will give away to everybody. We're not shy. So please do come and talk to us if you feel the need. Everybody have a wonderful evening. I'll hand you over to John, who's now going to talk about something far nearer to my heart. Apologies. Tom, who's not John, and isn't going to talk about whiskey.
I'll be very brief so we can hear more about whiskey. And I think John's just dramatically become very youthful through the drinking process. Thank you all for coming this evening. You're all very welcome to DWF's London office. I just wanted to very briefly tell you a little bit about DWF and to thank the Post for letting us host tonight's event. For those of you who are unfamiliar with DWF, we're a top 15 full-service international law firm with offices in every major UK city and France, Germany and Dubai. And since many of you were last here in March for the breakfast, we now also have offices in Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia, and a partnership with a firm in Latin America. And most importantly, we also have offices in Dublin and Belfast. I know what you're thinking, no offices in Westmeath or Clare, much to my own family's disappointment. Hopefully this time next year we'll at least have an office in Athlone or someone as important as that. For those who haven't met me before, my name's Tom McGovern. I probably met a lot of you coming in. You probably thought I was just here to get people in and take the coats, but I'm actually a litigator here, and well, I'm not collecting the coats. Yeah. I don't know which job's more rewarding, actually. And, so I work in resolving international disputes, both domestically and all across the globe. So who would have thought, growing up in a large Irish family in a small London flat, I'd be making my living by arguing with everyone day in, day out. Luckily, we had plenty of practice, mainly around the kitchen table, 10 times a day, every day, about all the important things like who's doing the washing up, who's doing the tea. But however, if any of you have things that are even more important than those, you're more than welcome to catch me afterwards and we can discuss them. I'm also fortunate enough to know Sarah Murphy. So we have the honour of hosting tonight's event. And it is an honour because when you grow up in a city of 10 million people and you're looking for a kind of a sense of identity, there was probably no bigger thrill than getting your name or picture in the Irish Post. I don't know if maybe that says more about my childhood than the importance of the Irish Post. But actually, in all seriousness, the Post plays a tremendously important role in our community, and the staff there work very hard to organise events like this evening and the fantastic awards event in November and many more events besides. And I suppose the purpose of those events and events like tonight is to develop that sense of identity and that feeling of being part of the community. So community is actually, I suppose, really about people who've shared experiences and shared sense of history. So we're really lucky to have these sorts of things, and the best way of making use of them, I suppose, is to get to know each other, work together to develop new opportunities, maintain that feeling of community and develop the bonds between us. So with that in mind, I look forward to catching up with those of you who I didn't have a chance to speak to other than can I take your coat later on, and you're all very welcome here. And now I pass you over to Mr. Teeling.
A couple of things before I say. Firstly, I'm not going to talk about whiskey at all. Actually, I'm not. And secondly, if I start to bleed out in front of you, I must explain that some of you already know. I was making myself beautiful before I came, and I shaved and nicked my nose. And for the older men in the room, you take aspirins. And so I started to bleed at 5:45, and I was still bleeding at 7:15. I mean, you think I joke. Some of you saw me inside with this thing stuck up my nose. Now, please, if it starts to bleed again, will you tell me I have some stuff in my mouth? I mean it, because it doesn't stop. What I would like to do is something quite different, if you didn't mind. I'll answer questions about whiskey willingly, if we have time. But what I wanted to do is something, I'm not going to talk about Brexit, I'm not going to talk about whiskey, I'm not going to talk about interest rates or bonds or anything like that. But what I might want to raise with you is, since most of you here are going to be working for the next 15 or 20 or 30 years, that's what you really should be looking at. That's what's important to us. It's not what's going on at the moment, and it's very hard if you're a business person to get your head out, up and look at what's going on. So I want to try and provoke you a little bit and throw some things out, and hopefully get some questions from you if we have time. Now, a couple of questions for you. You're going to say, what the hell am I doing? I know you are going to say, geez, I could be at home watching the telly. I know you are. Is longevity a blessing or a curse? I'll revise that question. How old do you think you guys are going to live? How many of you expect to live to be 100? Come on, seriously. Yeah, 2. Right. How many of you expect your children to live to be 100? Right. What about grandchildren? What age would they live to be?
Yeah, plus.
135, 130? 110. Now, for the last 16 or 20 years, longevity has been growing by 4 months every year. So every year you lived, your life expectancy was growing by 4 months. It has stopped in the last 2 or 3 years, quite dramatically. And nobody knows yet as to why it is. For instance, in the US, life expectancy dropped by 1/10 of a year in 2016, and it dropped in the UK. Now, hopefully this is only a blip. But is it a blessing or a curse? How many of you want to be old with pipes coming out of every orifice and a few new orifices they'll build for you? Let me ask another question. I said before, who wants to live to be 100? Yeah, I asked you that. Everybody who's 99. That's true. Everybody who's 99 wants to live to be 100. Remember that when you get to be 99. Now, the reason I ask this particular question is because of dramatic changes that are coming about in medicine. Just dramatic over the next 10 or 20 years. Another question. Is the EU going to survive? How many people here think that the EU will survive? Right. Let me ask you the question. How many think it won't?
Depends on the Italians.
It depends on a whole lot of things. Historically, economic unions that do not become political unions have never survived. Because the gaps are just too big. What's going on this week in Catalonia, you know, if you can have these little statelets, and they're all going to be different.
Yeah.
How, in God's name, is Greece and Italy and the Baltic countries going to be able to compete against Germany and France? It's not easy. It's not easy. About 3 or 4 years ago, if I was doing something like this in Ireland, I would have asked people, will the UK leave? And oh, never. Never. Do I care about Brexit? By the way, I don't care at all. Really don't. It's not a big deal, really. The world will continue anyways. If the EU survives, it'll have to integrate. Does it mean that most of your grandchildren, will they be conscripted? Now, from you guys, it probably won't if you're living here. My grandchildren could end up fighting for an EU army. Because they're going to, that leads to the next question. Is there a war coming? That's a shock. Oh, jeez, I don't want to address this. I look at it. Oh. You know, you have to address it. Is there going to be a war, maybe Islam, Christian war again? Could be. And if it's so, where it's coming from the east. It's going to come to Europe, and the EU is going to have to fight, and the EU is going to have an army, and they're going to have to be conscription, as there already is in Italy and Greece, and the Baltic countries again now have reintroduced conscription. This would be another reason for you guys to be Brexit, I know. Yeah. There are things that have to be done. You can't have your foot half in and half out of these things, and they can't continue on like that. So these are the kind of the bad things. Now, the very interesting area is, are you guys ready for disruption? Are you ready for the technical disruption that's coming?
So,
Are you really? Do you know what's happening? Do you know what's coming?
yeah.
How many industries are not going to survive? Some of them we might come back if we have time. Is there a future for the automobile industry as it exists now? Who's going to be driverless cars? Is it going to be Uber, Google, or General Motors? Or Tesla? it's probably not going to be General Motors, because much like the whiskey, they will not be able to adapt to new technology. Because what's a car? A car is now a computer with a box. That's what it is. And who makes computers better? Certainly Ford and General Motors don't make good computers. Big problem. Will all the malls and the Harrods of this world, are they going to survive? How many of you use online shopping now? Yeah. And is it working for you? Yeah. Can you see yourself using more of it? Yeah. Increasingly more of it. It's frightening. So, will you be investing if you're a long-term investor for your pensions, will you be investing in retail outlets? And you probably shouldn't. Because they won't be there. You might say, that's bullshit. Who can remember Polaroid? Who can remember Kodak? You know, remember those companies? What about Nokia? No, I have a Nokia. I'm joking. Anybody remember them? Yeah. The last of them probably worth a fortune. I am definitely a Luddite. It's about disruption. These are a couple of simple things. This is where the row starts. Have we anybody in insurance, law, or banking in the room? Yeah. All you guys are finished. You're all redundant. Any medics in the room? Yep, you're redundant too. Why? Have you heard of Watson? Anybody heard of Watson? Yeah, some of you have heard of Watson. The rest of you haven't heard of Watson, which is a disgrace. It's already in existence. If you go in to this lady, and instead of you're a robot now. And the robot says, what's wrong with you? And asks about 100 questions. The questions you will ask if you're a GP. Maybe not 100. And you use your experience to decide what's wrong. So what does the robot do? It clicks a button and it goes to Watson, which is an IBM computer program that looks at 200 million diagnoses in 3 seconds. Now, no matter how good you are, 200 million is a bit beyond you. Now, in certain oncology now, it has a 97% success rate, whereas the best oncology surgeons have a 95%, or doctors, 95%. It's actually better in some areas. There's a lot more to go. If you want to know, there's a lady called Jeannie Rometty, who's just had a couple of articles on this. She's the boss of IBM. So it's going to happen. Now, some of you guys who are in insurance and in law and in banking, when you were juniors, you spent all your time reading bloody things. Maybe you read all the bonds. You know, the small print and all the stuff. Correct. That's what you do. Those of you in law, you're reading title documents going back to 1792 or 60. Load of bullshit, completely. Why did you go to university to read? It's a load of nonsense. Two things are going to happen. Firstly, computers will read them. And secondly, blockchain. They'll be put into this blockchain technology, which means it can't be changed. So if a title deed goes into blockchain, or if a contract goes in, it can't be changed. It's safe. I'm sure that's wrong, but they say. You don't trust it, right? So there's going to be serious problems for a whole lot of areas in white-collar areas that haven't been touched yet, but it's going to happen, definitely, with certainty. What about this artificial intelligence or augmented reality? All this stuff I don't even know about. Is that going to impact on people dramatically? It's going to have huge impacts on people. Right, any other, they're the ones I want to raise, and I'll try and come back to them as you say, this is all about whiskey and about Brexit and things like that. But it's going to happen in your working lifetimes. This is not for your grandkids. So there's no point in doing this, which you've all been doing. You better start to look at it. I mean, blockchain works already. There are driverless cars. There is Watson. I don't know what's happening with the banks. You guys, you have good unions, the bankers, the insurance, and all that. You can stop that getting in. Oh yeah, particularly the lawyers. Jesus. Yeah, they're very good. They're very good. So it'll take a while, but it will happen. One of the problems I was just reading today before I came over is about in medicine is all the new technologies, and I'd like to go back to it if I have time. The new technologies is most of the doctors were trained and were working before the new technology, and they don't know what the hell to do with it. They have no idea what it is. And it'll take 10 or 15 years before they can be retrained, which for some of us is going to be too late. You know, it's frightening that it's there and it's done. All right, where's the good news? Have any good news or is this all bad news? Right, good news is as follows. 3,000 million people are going to become middle class over the next 15 or 20 years. 3 billion people. This is going to provide massive opportunities for everybody. Now, it's particularly relevant if you're an exporting country. Now, maybe many of you are not in that. Because what do these people want? They want everything. All these people want all of the things that you have. They want cars, they want fridges, they want televisions, they want Abercrombie and Fitch, they want McDonald's. Probably won't be McDonald's next time round. It'll be some other Five Guys or one of these new things, whatever the hell they are. I don't even know, I'm too old. Don't know what Why do you think I'm joking? And they also, thank God, want diamonds. 650 million Chinese girls say, if you love me, you give me a diamond. Is there any reason in the world why that should be? None in the wide world. Do you know there has not been 650 million gemstone quality diamonds ever discovered in the history of the world? Thank God for that. That's why we're digging holes in the Kalahari and places like that trying to find diamonds. It's one of the businesses that we're in. We found one, we couldn't finance it, couldn't get the money, and we sold it, and now like a big Egypt. I'm trying to say, you know, we beat the odds the last time, let's do it a second time. It's a bit stupid when I look at it. Anyway, but we're trying. Secondly, when people's incomes go up, what they do is they move to international things. They do move to other products, including brown spirits, including whiskey. And if you know, again, the business that we're in, Irish whiskey, it's only about 10 million case sales worldwide. And that's after huge success, up from 2.5 million in the last 20 years. It's growing like topsy, some of you know that. All these new companies. But it hasn't touched most of the world. Scotch is about 120 million cases. Bourbon is probably about 100 million. How many cases of whiskey are sold legally and illegally? You've heard some of this before. Legally in India. 700 million cases of whiskey are sold in India. I'll say it again because you know how you're talking about. 700 million. So if the Irish industry, or even Scotch, but if the Irish industry got 1% of the Indian market, 7 million cases, couldn't possibly supply it. Couldn't possibly, not possible. That would be equal to 60% or 70% of all the current world demand for Irish whiskey. So it can't be done. All of Asia, all of South America, all of Africa is open to it. But that's as they become middle class. Now I'm only picking on the things I know. But again, from the Irish situation, what else do people want, particularly say, in these countries? When mothers, when they move into the middle class, they won't breastfeed anymore. Now, when they become uber rich and have nannies, they go back to breastfeeding. The word is very strange. That's true. Harvard MBA females have a very low workforce participation. Why? Because they marry other Harvard MBAs, males. I don't give a curse whether they're males, females or others, I don't know what they are, but anyway, they marry other rich Harvard MBAs and they stop working. And do they change nappies? Not at all. They've nannies, of course. But they breastfeed because it's socially acceptable. Now, what happens when you don't breastfeed? You need infant formula. Are you going to trust Filipino milk or Brazilian milk or Chinese milk? No, you don't. You want Irish milk. Do you know that we supply 12%, maybe more, 12% of all the infant formula in the whole world? I have to give it to you again because you might not understand it. In the entire world comes from Ireland. Do you know that? Isn't that amazing? It was 16, it's now 12. Why? Because it has a brand premium. Anybody here from Cork? A couple of very There's a couple of very clever Cork men. What were they doing? They were going into Tesco in Cork and they were buying up the big things of infant formula, whatever you call it. What's it called? Some of you must know what it is. SMA, thank you, yeah. It used to be Cowan Gate when I was small, but I think it's probably gone now. SMA, big as much as they could buy, shipping it by air to Hong Kong where it was going into China and they were making a pile of money. They had to restrict these fellas coming in who didn't look like they were breastfeeding. Coming in. You know, now there'll be some Cork men who do look like they're breastfeeding. I'm from Dublin, so Cork people are very strange. And they actually started to restrict them. I think it was the 6 of the big things that you can buy. Because Irish milk has the idea that the quality is good, it's green and it's great. So the opportunity is huge. Now, they've had, the farmers are very good politically, so they're never good. Do you ever hear of a fella who's a farmer who's doing well? Never. Even in the budget yesterday, got another 300 or 400 million in the Irish budget yesterday. Christ, simple. It's just, but they're good at it. But the opportunities are going to be huge in those areas. So I think there are major opportunities coming out for over the next 10 or 15 years. What's the negative? The negative is you have to get into a plane and go a long way. And businessmen don't like to do this. You see, we're an hour to Heathrow and we whinge and bitch. You know, if you're 13 hours to Tokyo, it's tougher. But you're going to have to do it. That's where the opportunities are not going to be in Europe for the reasons I'm going to give you now in a second. And that, you know, probably most of you have heard that there are direct flights to Hong Kong, Shanghai and Tokyo coming in next summer in Dublin. Jeez, it's a new world, isn't it? None of us can imagine that world. Now, 2 flights to Dubai, 2 to Qatar and 2 to somewhere else a day out of Dublin. What the hell are they doing? It's all going on, but it's really a new world. And because that's where the opportunities are. They're not going to be in Western Europe. Why? Because we're facing an aging population. These populations are aging really fast in these countries. What's the oldest population country in the world? Well done, Japan. Yeah, the reason I'm going to ask you that is because what is Japan developing faster than anybody else? Yeah, that's right. Where'd that come from? Right. And robots. Because they have 3 types of robots now. They have names on them. They've run robot that looks after old folks. There are no young people in Japan. They won't allow them in. They just will not allow immigrants in. That's it. No point in arguing that they should do it. They don't do it. So they've developed robots that look after people in old folks' homes. They have robots that cleared the tables in fast food restaurants. They have one called Vivo that looks after creches, children in creches. And they have a new one, or maybe it's Vivo's the new one, which talks to old people in old folks' homes to try and get them to avoid dementia. It just talks to them, which apparently it's a good thing to do. And I'm there more than you, so I pay attention to these things more than you guys do. But also, if you take that and Western Europe is going to be the same as going down this way. But what else is very good in this area? And this is going to be important to you. Where are the opportunities coming up? And what are they leading at? New body bits. You want replacement bits, you go to Japan. Why? Because they're all breaking. You get you new hips, new legs, new everything like that. You can get it in Japan. It's going to happen in Western Europe. Now the negatives are that there won't be employees because there won't be enough workers. The positives are that aging populations tend to have money. And what do we want? You know, are we going to go backpacking in the Inca Trail or some crap like that? No. What kind of a holiday do we want? 5-star. Right? Because we're spending the grandkids' money. Do you think I'm joking? You know, yeah, I should actually go on to that. You're not old enough. I should lay into you all and ask you. For those of you with kids, with adult kids, do you give them money? No, you don't. You're saving for the rainy day. It's a load of bullshit. You can give with a warm hand or you can give with a cold hand. And most of you will not agree with that. You're going to give with a cold hand. You're going to die. And then they'll get the money, at which stage your kids are too old and the grandkids are going to piss it away, have a great time. Hold on. If it isn't the grandkids, who's going to piss it away? The taxman on social welfare. Yeah. You have 2 choices. What else are you going to do with your money? You're going to leave it to the cats and dogs home? Then the cats will have a good time. You've got to think. Sorry, this is not. I wasn't intending to go down this road. All right. So areas like this in an aging population, we have disposable income. I don't have a mortgage. If I do, I shouldn't have. Is there many people here who are older ones? The younger ones you haven't got it, but the older ones, do you fly business class?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. How many do? And I'll tell you why you should. In 1989, I went down to, I flew to Johannesburg to see a fellow called Benny Steinmetz. Any of you know anything about the diamond industry will have heard of Benny Steinmetz. Notoriously tough individual. I ride straight in off the plane, went to see him, gave me 45 minutes, then he fecked off, I had to go home again. But he said, do you fly business class? I said, no, I don't. He says, well, if you don't, your son-in-law will. And it's true, so I've flown business class since then. Always, I do. You know. And I talk to older groups, and these people in their 70s are using the free bus pass. Jesus Christ. Why would they use the free bus pass instead of a taxi? It's not their money. And most of them are still building up equity in their 60s and their 70s. You ask them, you say, how many of you are kind of putting away a little bit, and they're also virtuously, yeah, we all are. And then you have to bawl them out and say, what kind of Egypts are you? They don't like that. But you know, the bus pass is a badge of honour. You have it here too. What age? 60?
Currently 67.
66 we get it, yeah. I have it here. I've never used it. I haven't. I would not have it. Anyway, I don't want to. Because, anyway, this is irrelevancy. What are we going to do? This is the introduction, by the way. I get it. I'm joking.
Whiskey.
No, diamonds are much better. What else in ageing population? When we go on holidays, we want security and we want comfort. Why do you think cruises are so good? Because what happens, you get onto a 5-star place, you go to bed, and you're not going to be raped and murdered in your bed. You're not going to have mosquitoes eating you alive. You get up the next morning, you go on a protected tour to a place you want to see. You won't get deli belly or anything like that because you won't eat the stuff. They might give you a packed lunch, and you come back to your floating hotel. That's why old people use cruises. They want to be safe, secure, and comfortable. That's why you're going to see growth in. Some of you are probably involved in retirement homes. And you know what I'm talking about. I should have known that. Yeah, some of you probably are. They can only grow because they want to be safe. You know, the guys in their 60s say, oh, shall I beat the head off them? Yeah, sure you will. You can't run away from them because you're too old. And so you don't want it to happen. And you want to use your money sensibly that way. But there'll be opportunities. What else do they want to do? Have any of you gone back to education yet? Any of you no, nobody here is returning and gone back to education. There are big opportunities there. The people want something to do. Some of you may have heard of a fellow called Derek Davis. He used to work for RTE. He retired at 60. And the first Monday he came in and came down and was sitting there with the Irish Times and waiting around. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm retired. I'm waiting for the lunch. And she said, look, I married you for richer or poorer, but not for lunch. Now get out. He only lasted 2 years, actually, if you know. He died very, very quickly. So I don't know what she did to him, but anyway, it didn't work. So the whole area of what are people going to do with retirement is going to become big. Let me ask another question. Can the European states, can the UK and the Irish state, can they pay the pensions? No. No! All right, you know that. You all know that. They can't pay the pensions you guys have got. How many of you have defined benefit? People still with defined benefit pensions? Very few of us left. I'm on state pensions. State pensions. Because if even the state pensions are going to eat up the budget over time as we all get older. You know, pensions came in with Bismarck who says you live for maybe 2 years. The few people who would get to 65 would live for 2 years. Now you're going to live for 35 years. You've got huge issues, but positives, because they're there and all with things to do and people with money. I don't know what they do about the pension thing. We could discuss that at length at some stage, and I have no idea what the answer is. But you, young people, thank you, you're paying for us. Keep working, we need it for the pensions. It's true, that's what's going to happen. All right, let me move on from the two good things of growing middle class and growing an aging population with loads of money. And we have to come back to technology again, and I have to come back to medicine. The whole area that's going to change. You have personalized medicine and you have genome sequencing. It costs $13 billion to sequence the human genome for the first time. It's currently costing $8,000 to have it done, or is it less? Is it 1,000? 1,000, and it's going to go down to what, 100? So your whole genome will be done. So 13 billion to 1,000. Actually, well, I probably talked about this a while ago, it was 8,000, now it's 1,000 and going to 100.
I think HIV took 15 years and SARS took 15 days. Wow.
So everything about you is going to be known. And you will then figure out that there are already some of the treatments in this particular area are targeted treatment. So what they'll do is, is it children's leukemia now? If you have children's leukemia, the company called Galant, it's just been bought, I think, by Merck for some outrageous amount. What they'll do is, God forbid you have a child with this form of leukemia. What they'll do is they'll take the blood out of you, bring the blood to the lab, work on the blood, put in the proper antibodies, whatever they do, and it goes back and it gets rid of the leukemia. It cures it. Now you might say, this is ridiculous, but hepatitis C is cured now by a treatment of drugs. It's expensive. This is going to become dramatically different. And hopefully it's going to come. So what we're talking about, the 100-year-old with all the tubes, you're talking about two things, mortality and morbidity. Morbidity is the quality of life. And I think the major changes over the next 10 or 20 years are going to be in quality of life. You know, if you feel like you do now when you're 85, would you be happy enough to be alive? Yeah. 95, yeah, you would be, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that. And that'll be, you know, for those of us who need a replacement, knees replacement, hips, we'll get them done. How's it going to be done? 3D printing. So they'll take a photograph of this bad hip of mine, and they'll press a button, and the hip will come out. It's an exact replica of my hip. It'll work. They stick it in. On my knees and other bits. I don't know how many bits they can do, but it's getting better. Better come anyway. We won't go there. It's hugely different, hugely important what's going to happen. What about cloning? Anybody here from Kildare? No. There's a woman in Kildare, Mrs. Harrison. She's cloned her 2 favourite horses. Already. They're there. The Irish polo team horses have been cloned. Already, it's done. You don't talk too much about it because you'll have, you know, what are you called, Andromeda strains and all these kind of big worries. I went to hear a guy called Juan Estevez, who's former Harvard professor. They threw him out because he wasn't ethically or politically correct. He was doing things, and he's into this cloning area. And he said that he went to Argentina where they were working on it, and he's taking photographs of all these guys. And the guy says, "Sir, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm photographing." He said, "Why would you bother? They're all the same. You only want one photograph. They're absolutely identical in every way." So I came out to the wife, and I said, "I'm going to clone myself." She says, "That's okay." She says, "But I want to know, will you be toilet trained at 68? And in fact, I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody know, if I clone myself, would I be toilet trained, which you have to, which could be a little bit more difficult. I don't know. But there are issues. It can be done now. Is it going to be stopped? Of course it's not going to be stopped. It's probably been done more than we know, but it's already there. Now, if you turn on to technology, I'm going to try this, and somebody don't fight with me if I'm wrong. A gigabyte of data cost $598 in 1999. It costs 2 cents today. 2 cents. So the cost of information and communication is going to go to zero. It's going to be a total commodity. You can already see with the internet, when you call up look at your kids in Sydney and things like that, it's the cost of a local call. It's nothing. It's a couple of pence. Can you believe that? Can any of you remember in Ireland when you couldn't get a phone for 4 years? Yeah. Jesus Christ, it was unbelievable. All kinds of influence was used to try and get. The TDs were Uber Gruppenführers. They could get a line from... Awful. It was 3 or 4 years before you could get a line. Now, nobody uses phones anymore. Nobody uses landlines, hardly at all. They won't, and it can only get significantly better. I was talking to a guy, or listening to a guy recently who said, I said to my kids, let's go and watch the 9 o'clock news. They said, what? They said, it's 8:51, I have the news here on my machine. Modern news, at least as up to date as the BBC or ITV. In front of me all the time. I said, well, why would I go in to listen to anything? What does that mean? They don't watch television. Has this any implications for advertising? Big time. Big time. Something else you will find very strange. The number, maybe you won't, maybe I'm the one who finds it strange. The number of people getting driving licenses is declining. That, to the older ones you might say, that, you have to think about that tonight. Why would you get a driving license? You call an Uber. Why would you bother? You use the public transport, you use the metro. If you're in a big city like London, where do you park your car? This kind of stuff. If you're in New York, it's exactly the same, you can't do it. Some dramatic changes in what's going to happen here. Areas of technology will be areas like batteries. What's going to happen there? Existing battery manufacturers are all out of sync. They expect Japan to have 65% of the world's batteries by 2021 with new lithium-ion batteries. So existing battery manufacturers, their technology is gone arseways. It's gone. They won't be able to survive. So that's another one of the industry that's going to go. But I want to come back to the things like that, to the medicine, how else are going to prove it. Less than 10 years' time, they will not operate for breast cancer. They won't do it. There'll be different technologies. Will it be chemotherapy? No, which is a brutal treatment for those of us who are going to have to go through it or have gone through it. It's just a brutal treatment. It'll be personalised treatment. Now, it's still in its infancy, but it's being done and the technology is there. You have to develop it, you have to spread the technology, and you have to get the guys, retrain the guys. An old specialist will be very hard to retrain. So I don't know where you go and things like that. But the future looks fantastic. I mentioned 3 and 4D printing. I don't even know what 4D printing is, but it's very good. And that's, some of you, have any been involved in 3D printing? No, not yet. But you will be. You'll be able to print everything that you want. Airplanes will be printed. The bits of airplanes will be printed. And they'll be perfect because it's just a photograph. You know how you send a photograph on your computer? You know, you take a photograph on your phone, you send it to the grandkids or something like that. That's it. Same thing. There's no difference in technology. That's what it's going to be. They'll photograph the bit of the airplane that's broken and print it and put it in. You know, they just build the layers up one another. I'm sure there are the little minor kinks in it, other than it's not as simple as that, but it is happening. So the rate of technological change is absolutely dramatic, and it's going to impact seriously, I think, on your lives, all of you. Is print media going to survive? Yeah. Is that a hope or an expectation?
Sure, surely.
Is it not a question though that you have it never comes up in your board discussions?
Of course.
Yeah. You know, can more regular straight line newspapers survive? And why would you? Because all the kids just refer to everything here. They have it on their phones quicker than anybody else. So the form of your newspaper has to be more commentary rather than reporting news, because you can't keep up with the level of the news. Will regular television survive against the Netflixes or against everything that's going to be on your mobile? No, it won't. It can't. Now, again, most of you here, I'm afraid, are nearly, I was going to say past it, and I don't mean it like that. I'm causing them out to get going into shock now. So they didn't realise you were all redundant. But that, in fact, it will be your 10-year-olds, your 15-year-olds will be able to do these things and will have no problems understanding it, whereas the rest of us do. And the changes will be hugely important in terms of what's going to happen. So, all right, I'm going to stop and take questions on that. You can ask me about whiskey, and you like after that. Where do I say? I think the opportunities outweigh the threats, big time, big time. It's fabulous. You'd love to live another 30 or 40 years to see how these things are going to happen. How's the ability to grow and expand into completely new areas, and the fact that we should be healthier to be able to do that and to be able to enjoy the fruits of this. I see big threats coming from the world. I see threats in the EU, and I see certainly threats for some traditional jobs. A lot of the ones that have been white collar, which is the new part about it. Now, more the mechanics will probably be wanted. But I'm afraid that the accountants, sorry fellas, you might be in a bit of trouble, because there's nothing that a computer can't already do. I'll probably maybe do it better, but anyway, so I won't say that. You have to do it. So sorry about giving you something different from what you thought, but that, in fact, I think on balance, the next 10, 15, 20 years offers huge opportunities, great threats, but it's certainly going to be a very interesting time. Okay, I'll take any questions if you have any questions on that. Oh, there's a question already.
I'll start off with the question from the back of the room.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you talked about threats. How about a huge threat that wipes out all of our internet for 1 year? Where do you think we'll be? How do you think we'll cope?
Well, one, we cope, because we have to have a choice. We'll have to. Two, it's possible that it's right, and I don't know where it would come from. If we did, we could look at it. Maybe at higher levels they look at that. I don't know enough to know that how it would come. But you would go back to traditional methods. You'd just have to go back to traditional methods, and it would certainly be majorly disruptive. But I don't think it will be a serious. The answer is, I'm going to say I don't know. Others might have different views on that. It's becoming ubiquitous now, so you'd be lost without it. Sorry, but it's a poor answer because I don't know.
Well, I think it would be a nightmare in healthcare, because if you were saying Watson is going to be the diagnostic tool of the future, if the internet has gone for a year, you'd be a huge problem.
You'd be back in space. They'd need you there at the dock as a GP. You'd be back. You'd be back in on that.
Let's just say it's gone for 1 month. It's the same scenario.
Yeah, I think our reliance on it, but then there must be presumably, are there more backup systems, more secure systems, but that still doesn't mean there's not some kind of, the thing that could be solar flares. The solar flare could knock out the systems. I don't know for how long, but it will at some stage do it. I have a son-in-law who's in Trinity, and that's what he spends his time doing. This is the fellow who flies business class. He's an ex-NASA scientist.
You talked a lot about the future. What happens in 100 years when our Mars colony declares independence?
Well, hold on. Elon Musk says he's sending a thing to Mars in, 2024? And who's going to argue with Elon Musk, who is undoubtedly the greatest entrepreneur of his era, better than Steve Jobs or anything like that? I was listening to that fella Hadfield. Remember the Major Tom guy who went around the world singing the song Major Tom? He was in Dublin, and he was asked if there could be a thing to Mars, and he said the technology hasn't yet been developed. So is this Star Wars 5? But I mean, yeah, it's you know, fact is sometimes stranger than fiction, and science fiction has been coming to pass. The answer again is I don't know. Why don't you ask me something easier?
Why is it that people are now buying more books and they're using their iPads and Kindles less?
I think that's a very good question, but is that a significant trend or is it a blip? I think there's still bookstores. It has bottomed out, but there are still bookstores closing. But in general, yeah, it has picked up. I mean, I'm one of them.
Yeah. Because people like tangible things, paper, come on.
Yeah, I think it's easier to read. Right. The Kindles, I find are hard. Sorry, go ahead, I'll come back, yeah.
Yeah, you talked about the threats to the European Union, and I'm just wondering, from the Irish perspective, if not the European Union, what then for a small, neutral island country like ours?
I think the threats from the European Union to Ireland are very significant. From the European Union, because I think the threat is to our tax harmonisation. I mean, it's great when you say, we're only a poor little 4 million. God help us. We have to have tax incentives. There are poorer countries in Europe than we are now. And are we a tax haven? Bloody, this is within the room. Of course we're a shagging tax haven. Totally. I mean, if Apple pays 0.004% on $216 billion, yeah, that's a tax haven. But our civil servants have been brilliant in fighting our case for 40 years. That, I think, is a big threat. I think Trump's tax threat is a bigger threat than this. I think we have an issue. But, yeah, if you take our whiskey business, we sell in all the countries we sell in. We have different tax regimes because there's different excise duty in every country in Europe. So we already have to do it, and it's all done online. We also have to have different back labels. Now it's a pain in the ass, but it gets done. It'll be done before it. Will there be disruptions? Yes. I think if you are a low commodity price Irish business, now I go mad when Primetime or RTE decides it will show, the companies in trouble on the border. Some fella who's turning metal with a 10% gross margin. I mean, for Christ's sake, lads. Or mushrooms. Mushrooms are purely a function of the currency. It doesn't matter whether it's Brexit or whether it's interest rates. If it goes up 10%, you've lost your gross margin and you're bunched. It's as simple as that. If you're exporting commodities, you're at risk from any changes in currency. So it's a currency issue. Now, some of you may have known Tara McCarthy, the boss of, she's very good at Board BA, yeah, she's the boss of Board BA. And she would admit that it's really currency. But there's a big issue. Well, we threats, yes, there are threats out there. Do I think the Irish will adapt to it? Yes, I think the Irish will know. I think some of the multinationals, if US tax goes back to 25%, I listened to somebody recently said, but we'd still be 12%. We're late, aren't we? Don't worry. We're all right. They'll all run. At the moment, it's 37% American tax versus 12.5% Irish tax, or much less. If it goes to 25%, our advantage is significantly reduced anyway. I think that's a serious threat for us. I think we're very good at doing it. Will there be some kind of a border? I don't see how there can't be. Mainly because of people. It's as much as goods. Now, I don't know how you police 470 roads anyway. Are they being policed at the moment? No, they're not. As you know, one of the issues you've had, which may or may not be known to you, is they have been deporting people in the UK, I think mainly Pakistanis, if they've been here for more than a year, haven't they? They've been getting deported. What they're doing is they're coming into Ireland through Belfast. I figure it was 7,000 in the last year. Just came across. They're all living in Dublin. So, the issue exists. When you have a land border, I don't know what you do. I think it's something of concern, all right. Sorry, there were a couple of questions here. Where were they? Yes, ma'am.
I was in your BCom UCD.
Did I pass you?
You did.
Thank Christ.
1986. What would have been really valuable to have known back then? In this type of
that was my last year teaching. I went on leave of absence after that. They never let me back. That's true too. You know what? I think keeping an open mind, could we have predicted what was going to happen? No, you couldn't have in 1980. I can't remember what I would have been talking about at that time. But it would have been this kind of stuff. But none of the ideas I've talked.
Like this kind
Yeah,
of
but
stuff.
none of the ideas I've talked about tonight. They
No,
didn't exist.
Nothing.
No, robots, AI, 3D printing, cloning, making customized medicine didn't exist at all. So no matter how good I wasn't that good. But I still would have been looking at, because I think the job of a business person is to look to the future. My job is I'm a senior management. I'm not the guy, I'm not a day-to-day manager. My job is to see where the company can survive 5, 10, 15, 20 years out. And you need to have, I don't think you can do an awful lot about it, but you need to keep your eyes open and to work on that. And what did you do after the BCom? Became an accountant?
Banking.
Oh, same thing. Sorry, go on. Yeah? Go ahead.
Just one question. I was reading in one of the Irish papers about they were commending Ireland on their tax rates, and they were saying that we need to be a bit more diverse now because it could all go under. And they were on to the Taoiseach saying that he needs to maybe do something now with the actual workers in Ireland, create more entrepreneurship. I mean, what do you think they need to do, and what do you think Ireland need to do to stop relapsing?
One of the things, and some of you here are old enough to remember, when I came back from the States in 1972, and in fact, your uncle was part of it. Three of us were in UCD. It was myself, Frank Roach, his uncle, and John Murray. And we decided that we were going to do a First Commerce, a Second Commerce, and a Third Commerce program, which is really an entrepreneurship. My job at First Commerce was to go into these 300 beautiful, nice, bright people who had all come up in a non-entrepreneurial culture, and to abuse them soundly. To do what I tried to do here is, my job was to get them to go out and say, he is full of it. And they went down to their restaurant and had a cup of milk or coffee. They said, it's full of crap. Did you hear what he was saying? And that's where the learning takes place. You provoke people to do it. And I did First Commerce, Frank did Second Commerce for about 30 years, and the late John Murray did Third Commerce. Now, I think there was very little entrepreneurship when many of you left. I think most of you would know that. In fact, there's a very good case that, in fact, the entrepreneurs left and went to England and to the US. Why? Because you were entrepreneurs. If you think about it, you were prepared to take the risks and to go. You only have to look at the number of senior executives in the top companies here, in the top businesses, and the same in the Fortune 500. But in fact, I think it has improved quite dramatically since then. In your particular year, if I'd have asked you 300, how many were going to set up their own business? Maybe 20 or 30. Now, of the 300, it'll be 280. That are going to. Has it gone to the opposite extreme? Probably, because it isn't that easy to set up your own business. But I think the idea is good. I think opportunities have been there. In a good 30 years, people see opportunities. But it needs to be done. The reason for the whiskey was my research interests back then, where I want to do indigenous enterprise, which I still want to do, because I'm afraid that American companies are footloose. Now, they're good footloose. They come to Ireland for tax advantages or cheap labour. When they go, I'd be afraid some of them will leave. In fact, I know some of them will leave. They're supposed to leave. So I wanted a business that couldn't leave. So what does Whiskey do? It uses Irish air, Irish thyme, Irish water, and Irish grain, and it's all export. The value added is huge. I was talking like this in Waterford Institute of Technology and got reamed out of it by first year. I said, we buy a ton of malted barley for 400, we do things to it, and we sell it in Germany after 4 years for about 3,600. And he stood up and he says, typical bloody jacking, raping the farmers. I thought I was doing well. I really did. I was caught. One of the few times I was caught speechless on it. It's great value. That's why they're the type of industries I'm interested in, and I think there will be other ones like that. I think there's big opportunities in culture tourism, and people will come, and expensive high-end ones. Older ones who don't want sun, sand, sea, and there's another one which I can't remember. Sangria. Yeah. You're old too.
He should have it at the sangria.
Yeah, and that they can have a good time and spend their money. There's a group now bringing in Chinese tourists. €2,000 a day. There is the cost. It's everything's helicopter. And they only have bespoke everything. They go and see the Marquess of Waterford and Lady Waterford, the Countess Waterford, and she makes tea for them. This kind of stuff, but you're paying €2,000 a day for the privilege. They don't care. Now that's nice money. Sorry, go ahead.
I know it's hard to measure happiness, but will we be happier in the next 20 years?
That's the second time that question has been asked for me in 8 days. A fellow called Paddy McAvoy, some of you know the banker in Dublin. Paddy McAvoy asked that question. I don't know how to measure that. Are we happy? I don't know is the answer. Jesus, it's been very good for me. I've been blessed, and I'm very lucky. I don't back horses. I'm a dub. Don't own them. I don't eat them. I think. I don't sail. Don't play golf. So all I can do is try and set up businesses, and what else would I do? I'd sit at home, so it's been very good to me, including the failures. When you wake up some of you wake up at 4:30 in the morning, say, Jesus, what did I do? Because it's always dark and the wind is blowing, and your spouse or whoever's spouse beside you, whoever's there, is snoring away happily, and you say, shit, why did I do this? I have a friend who made money, and he was weird. He used to wake up at 3:30. And I said, what would you do? He says, well, I'd elbow Breda. And I'd say, get up and make me tea. I said, I could probably do that once. And I said, why do you do that? And he says, a very good point, fellas, who are married. If she enjoys the good times, she can bloody well enjoy the bad times. You know what? It's not a bad idea. Now, my long-suffering wife has heard that story so often. She says, oh yeah. Sorry, there's another question. I don't know what you're doing in time.
Yeah,
one more. We're all right now. It's fine.
More.
Yeah, I'm happy enough. I'm not going anywhere. I've nowhere to go.
As a nation, the Irish are renowned for being people who can communicate, get on with other people, get everybody involved. How do you see the advancement of technology having the impact on how the Irish are perceived within the...
Yeah, again, very good question. In other words, where we all done by communications, by technology, and not by voice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, geez, you're asking me very hard questions. I didn't sign up for this. I still think we're probably small enough, coming back to your situation, that we can be, that they'll be rolled for personal situations. Now, is this more hope than expectation? I don't know. But how many of you do a lot of your work by email now? I do. Yeah, a lot of us do, so we don't have any personal communication. Do you make as many phone calls as you used to? I certainly don't either. You do? I don't. I don't. I don't use Skype that much because I have an awkward room and the bad, anyway. But I would use an awful lot of emails. But I think I'm a Luddite because email is gone now, isn't it? Something else, Snapchat or WhatsApp or what the hell are they? Things like that. I don't.
And do you not find that against what you're all about as an Irishman? It's about having a conversation.
Yeah, look, I'm saying it against myself. Yeah, I would have been stuck to the telephone with my ear for years, because I tend to work out of the office in Clontarf Road. Some of you know where it is. I'm in the same room since 1969, little tiny room, and I would have tried to talk by phone to people. Now you send them an email. You don't talk to them. Yeah, I mightn't talk to some of the guys I work with for a couple of weeks on end. It's all done by emails, which it's a fair point. It's something to work. Are we more disconnected? I don't know. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
As a telephone man, I would say get yourself a cordless headset and it changes your telephone experience. Okay, you can be out in your garden and still talk to them. What I would say is, it's this whole disruption thing. Okay, you basically said that the middle class that we know are going to lose their jobs in the short term. So
might be that short, yeah. Might be that short. I hope it's not.
Well, I think it will be. I think it'll be like the way telephony changed in the 80s and 90s.
It just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's a good example.
But so, okay, there's this lovely future where we'll live longer. How are we going to be able to afford the new hits? You know, and the quality of life won't be very good.
It should be productivity. You shouldn't ask me that question because there's a big worry about this. If you're an economist, productivity should do it. In other words, Switzerland doesn't have anything, but they're all rich because they're living on dividends and interest. And for a lot of us, that's what we're going to live on in our old age. One, we have the pensions, which you guys are paying for. And secondly, we have our interest and our dividends of funds that we've done. And that will continue because there'll be a need for capital. But is there? That's a completely different, it's a room for another one. Productivity has been falling, or not rising for the last number of years. And the economists have no idea why. Now, I'm going to give an answer and I don't know. Productivity is what improves our standard of living, basically. You know, when you have full employment and you have capital, so it's only how much more you can make from the same inputs. And you would have thought with all the improvements in technology it should be rising, as it did for 25 years, and it's not. It hasn't been rising for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's a major worry, because the economy can only grow by 2 or 3% a year if productivity doesn't rise. And that would be, I think, a major concern for us. We're probably all right. It's maybe our case major disruption, but I think that is a concern. But it's a kind of a technical discussion. There's one last lady there. All right. Sorry. She has to pay extra money to the room.
No, I'm the woman that said to ask me a question later.
All right. Well now.
In the context of what's going on now, and quite a few people who left Ireland, the generation struck me, are actually turning and looking back at Ireland and thinking they'll go back. Can you think of anything that the mindset within business and government Ireland could be more open and welcoming to those people coming back? There's a certain nervousness because people did go back before and got very badly burnt. That what do you think would be different, or would we make it easier?
I think you do you realise how topical that question is? Somebody asked, we talked about it just during the thing. The latest figures out in the last week, 3,000 a week are coming back. 3,000 a week are coming back. Now there's still people leaving, so the net is not big. But they're finding out that it isn't that welcoming. Because if you haven't got your bank account, they put you through all the bullshit now, Well, you bankers, money laundering rules. You have to have licenses. You haven't got licenses. I think to open a bank account, you have to have anyway, it's wrong. And they should change that. Also, a driving license. If you guys didn't keep your driving licenses up, they force you to sit in with all the great unwashed and do the tests, And there was one woman on just over the weekend, and she says, I've been in the States, I've driven for 17 years. I now came back, and they want me to go and take a drive. They now have a verbal test or a written test you have to do as well. So that's silly, things like that. They do definitely need to be more homecoming, because when you do come back, you bring money. Some people do go back. B, you bring different views. We've all been away. I was away only as a student for about 7 or 8 years. But I never wanted to be anywhere else. But you go back differently. You know that yourselves. You go back and say, Mother of Jesus, look what's going on in these places. When you do go back and say, how in God's name can they live like this? Anyway, fine. Don't go there. Don't go there. Go and change it. But I do think maybe that's something that you as the Irish Post could take up. And the organisation could take up. Is that, look guys, get rid of barriers to going back. Just get rid of these stupid barriers. That's a stupid thing. Help them on. But, how do you change the rules? The EU says you must do this for bank accounts, those bankers, and you'll have to do that. And for the driving licence, you'll have to have some kind of exemptions if you had one before. But it shouldn't be beyond the ken of a small country with 4 million. We used to be very good at doing that, but I think that's a very good point, that we need to be more welcoming. Now, we were very good years ago in giving grants for people coming back and things, for businessmen setting up. At the moment, and I probably will stop after this, if you're Chinese, not many, and if you're Chinese and you want to have a boat home, you can put up $1 million, €1 million, for 5 years in a repayable, redeemable preference share. And you can get a residence visa. You've not heard of these things before. But what's fascinating about Ireland, which is not true here, is you don't have to resident. You can have it in your back pocket. And if the corruption police are coming down the road at you, you get on your plane in Shanghai, you get off in Dublin, and you present your residence visa. So it's great insurance if you're rich. There's apparently 500 applications in. And a lot of them are not being passed because the guys don't want to take any risk anyway with the money. They want a guaranteed return of your money after 5 years, which kind of breaks the rule. It's supposed to be creative. But I would think that's something might be worth looking at. How do they make, they all say, the welcome mat is open, but they make it difficult for you. Housing is a mess in Dublin. Housing is just a mess. If you're in London, maybe you haven't made the money. If you're outside of London, you probably can't afford houses in Dublin anymore. Is it as bad as 2007? No, it's not. And will it ever get as bad? Possibly will, but it's rising at a huge amount. Thank God for those of us who survived that you did it. But yeah, I think that would be an interesting one, yeah. Is that it, or is there one last question? One last question, right?
When is the next session? What month in the year?
hopefully after I've gone gaga and can't remember what's going on. I think we've got a few years left in Ireland yet, because we're coming back up for a while on that. Now, is there going to be an international one? There has to be. The bull market is 8 or 9 years old. It's very, very old. It's too old. Valuations are very high, and there will be some change in it. What's going to happen when interest rates start to go up? As they should. And if you remember your BCom, inflation is too much money chasing too few goods too quickly. That was how it was defined. And in fact, we've had that, loads of quantitative easing and no inflation. None. So that has to change, otherwise the laws of economics are not right. And they are. So there will be some serious recession, but I think Ireland is probably looking good for the next while. I wouldn't see it happening in the it's probably going to happen next Monday, and I'll be screwed. No, I'm old. I haven't got as much. That's so yeah, I don't know, and none of us ever do. Look, if we're business creators or entrepreneurs, we look up all the time. We tend not to see the potholes. We don't want to see the bloody potholes, and we assume that we'll jump over them when we come to them. Okay, look, we better let you go home before the lights go out. Look, thank you very much for listening to me. I enjoyed
it. Thanks very much, John. I'll just finish by saying thank you to everyone for coming this evening. Great to get everyone together. There's some more drinks being served outside, so you can spend a bit of time networking, chatting, and then I think a few of us are going to migrate across the road to the Lamb and Leadenhall Market for anyone who wants to continue on. So thanks again and have a nice evening.